Hey everyone, it's me, Jonathan from Motor Psychology. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome, and if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. So in today's video, it's not going to be about the C3 Corvette. It's going to be about a maintenance job that needs to be done on this 2009 Ford Ranger. So basically, it's about changing the front rotors and hubs and bearings and pads out on the front end of this thing. So it needs to be done. It was a rough winter, so let's dive into it and see how it goes. So let's go over these parts here. This is a outside bearing for the front hub. This is an inside bearing for the same front hub for both the left and the right side. And these are seals as well. And of course we've got the brake pads here. Just going to quickly open these, check them out. So you've got the typical roller bearings, like cone shaped, and the race as well. Not too sure if I'll need the race, but we'll check that out in a moment. So this one's the outer, it's smaller. And this is the inner, and it has the race, but once again you've got the cone bearing and the race as well. So the interesting thing about this particular car is the hub is part of the rotor, which is always interesting. So every time you change the rotor, it's a good idea to change the bearings. These are just the seals for the inside. They'll pop in. And here we have standard brake pads. Comes with the pads here. It's got a nice thick layer of padding on it. Looks pretty good. And also has some clips as well. So that's great. Here's the box for the rotor. It's made by Robestos, and it's for the Ford Ranger, and let's check that out. These are pretty heavy parts. Oh, nicely packaged with a piece of wood, cardboard, and the rotor, which is pretty heavy. So it does have the race in it, and I'll just pull it out to show you better. So looking at this, the studs, the wheel studs, are already part of this rotor. So you've got ABS stuff on it. It has the inside race already in there, and it's also got the outside race, so I don't need to put those in. And there's the rotor. So when you actually put the rotor on, it's like putting a complete hub on there. So that's pretty cool. They're expensive, but a good product as well. So let's go put this on the car and see how it goes. So this is the vehicle we're going to be working on. It's a 2009 Ford Ranger, and I've had it since it's been brand new. So we're going to be changing out the brake pads and rotor and bearings on this wheel and the other side. So hopefully it'll be useful for those people who don't know how to do something like this. Pop this off here. Should be pretty straightforward. Now we'll jack it up. All right, we'll take the tire off now. Got to take this thing off. Here we go. So here's your hub rotor assembly, and it's just a matter of taking the cotter pin off and then taking this guy off as well, and then we can pull the whole thing out. But first I'm going to take the caliper off and just lift that up. To take it off, there's a couple bolts. There's one back here and there's one way down here as well. That one there has to come out. Once those come out, then this thing here can just pop off. So for these screws here and a couple at the back, I'm going to use some penetrant. These out. All right, we should be able to get this off now. These two caliper mounting bolts use blue Loctite on them, so they're always a little bit challenging to get out. So this should just slide off that way. So now it's about taking this out. Just got to bend the cotter pins down. Bend the cotter pin down. pop it through like so. Take this cap off here, and then take this guy off here, which should not be on very tight. Perfect. So that was the number 27 on there. And just unscrew this thing. Pop this washer off. Come on. All right, then inside here you can see the bearing. This one here is destroyed basically. See how loose that is? Still works, but would make a rumbling noise. So let's pop that out. Right there. I'll have a look at that on the bench. And the rest is pretty straightforward. This whole rotor will come out. There we go. So here is the spindle. This is super rusted because of where I live. Not much you can do about that, except be thankful for where you live, maybe not have that. And then just got to clean this thing up. Get it ready for the new one. Fire some brake cleaner on here. All right, this spindle is nice and clean. Now I just got to put everything together and get this brakes back on. All right, here's the old one. There's the ABS. There's a seal here and an inside bearing, and let's compare it to the new one. There they are, side by side, and they have the races in them, thankfully. So when it comes to the bearings here, it's just a matter of grabbing the bearing. This race is already in there, so we don't need it. And this cone-shaped roller bearing, which looks in pretty good shape, will go in here, like so. Perfect fit. And then the dust cap will go on it. Before I do that, I've got to pack these bearings. And I'm going to do both of these at the same time. So let's get on with doing that. And we don't need this anymore. So there's probably a few ways on how to pack these cone-shaped roller bearings. So the way that I learned is to put a glob of grease in the palm of one of your hands and then just kind of force the grease through one side of the bearing, usually the larger side, and that pushes all the grease up into the rollers and gets those completely covered. And you know that you've done a good job when you can start seeing the grease come out of the top of the bearing and kind of bubbles out. And then you just keep on going around this bearing and packing as much of this grease in as possible. And you can literally feel the bearing get heavier in your hand and more solid, but it's surprising how much grease you can pack in there. And it's really important to get as much grease in there as possible before you install this into your rotor or into your hub. Takes up quite a bit of grease, actually. This is a great grease compound for wheel bearings. It's really sticky and you can see strands kind of glob off it as well. and it's good quality, and it should last for easily the duration of that particular wheel hub or rotor. No problem. This is not my favorite part of doing this work. Tiny bit more, just in case. I decided to show as much as I can about packing the inner and outer bearing, at least for one of the hubs or rotor, and not show it for the other hub or rotor as well. So taking my time just to show the complete process for the inner and outer bearings, since it is part of getting this job done from start to finish. All right, this one's pretty much done. It's going to get placed. It's going to get placed down here like that. Perfect. Okay, time to put this seal or the cap on it. Once again, it goes on here. Give a little bit of grease on the sides there. So now the dust seal is on there. A good idea is to use a piece of wood just to keep it nice and flat, and then use a hammer to tap it in. All right, that one's in. And we'll do this small bearing. Same technique with this, is just put the grease in there and then just push and pack it in there. So take that and just keep pushing it in there, and then eventually it's going to come out the top. And then you know it's done. So you can see it creeping out the top already. There. That would mean that it's packed on that side pretty well. That one's packed up there. It's coming through the top, that's perfect. It's a very repetitive process, but it's super important that you get as much of the grease into these wheel bearings as possible. So watching the video, it seems to take quite a long period of time relative to the length of the video, but in reality we're looking at a couple minutes work per bearing, so it's really not that bad. There you go, that one's packed, ready to go. All right, that one's done, and I'm just going to sit this in there for now. All right, we're back here. This thing is junk. Whoops. So one of the first things to do is to put another bit of grease on this. Not a lot, but enough. There's a few things that'll need to go on afterwards. You've got a big washer, the main adjustment nut, and somewhere in here, the cotter pin. So I'm going to get that set up, and there are specific procedures on how to do this as far as the torque and back it off and then retorque, and I'll show you that as I install it. So getting ready to put this on, and it's just a matter of sliding it on. So there's the back side again with the ABS stuff, and the seal's in place, and it's just a matter of sliding it on the spindle like so, and that is it. I need to put in the outer bearing and then torque that up. So the first time you torque it up, you've got to torque it to 17 to 25 pounds, and then back it off and then retorque it to 20, and then you're set, at least for the Ranger. So let's get this one set up. All right, time to put this guy in. This washer can go in now. Perfect. The adjustment nut can go in. So that's supposed to be at a 20. There we go. Back it off and then redo it. Roll this around. Help seat the bearings. There. That's it. It's about 22, 20. So this guy goes on here. Cotter pin goes through. Go. All right, that one's done. Now I just got to put the lid back on it. Tap the dust cap back in here. So this one is done. We just have to change the brake pads. All right, so now you can see the pads just push out like so. And then you've got this thing here, just good to go. You can replace these things if you want. Mine are okay, so I'm probably not going to change them. These are the new pads here, which, just as a match, they're the same as the old ones, so they'll slide on really easily. So there's the caliper mounting bracket, and these guys just go in from the outside and slide in. So let's do that. The actual caliper pad mounting bolts, they go in at 27 foot-pounds. So let's get that thing organized and put on here. So one of the good things to do is use a C-clamp to push those back in. In order to do that properly, you've got to take the top off the master cylinder as well, just to give it some room to breathe. But other than that, that's it. So this just helps compress the piston back into the caliper. This one done. Just wanted to let you all know that I am aware of using caliper hangers, and I will use a caliper hanger on the right side, but in this one I had pretty much positive control over this caliper for the majority of this job. Here we go. Just so you guys know, this caliper is only a year old, and that's how rusted they get here. Crazy, eh? All right, I'm going to stick the blue Loctite on here. And for those of you who don't believe this works well, I've done the brakes without using the Loctite on this vehicle, and they start to clatter, so this stuff works. All right, that's in. Just got to torque that to 85. There we go. There we go. Well, I kind of got snafu'd on this. It's kind of snowing and raining at the same time. So I'm going to close it down for a bit and then come back out. Now we're going to put in the brake pads into this slot and this slot, this slot and this slot, and then we can put the caliper back on. All right, there's that one in there. So this is now in. The brake pads have been slid onto the guides on the pad part of the caliper that holds them in. The next part is just to put the caliper on and then put the bolts through there, and then this wheel is done. All right, this is super straightforward here. It's a matter of putting this on. Just fits. Sometimes you have to press these guys in a little bit. There we go. This little guys go in here. They don't screw in too tight, actually. before I put the wheel on, I just want to spray it down with some brake cleaner. The reason I'm using lots of brake cleaner on this disc is just to get rid of all the shipping oil that was on it. They ship them covered with a light coating of oil so that they don't rust. So when you put a new disc on there, it's really important to get as much of that shipping oil off of it as possible. So that's why I'm giving this a thorough cleaning with the brake cleaner. So at some point I'm going to have to get a new brake disc guard, and I'm going to have to order that and install that, so that'll be basically taking all this off again. Anyway, this is done and moving on to the next one. So just getting ready to put this wheel back on, and it looks like it could be oily, but that's just water from the snow rain mixture that occurred probably about an hour before putting this wheel back on the Ranger. So these get torqued down to 100 foot-pounds, and I'm going to do that in 1 sec. I'm going to torque that up to 100 now. All right, that one's all done. On to the next one over there. Working on side number 2. This one is bound to be worse because it's been grinding right on the rotor and gone right down to the metal. All right. This one is in super rough shape. The pad has gone right down to the metal and gone, and it's been grinding on metal since then. So hopefully this thing is not broken. I don't know. Could be some of the pistons on there. I'm going to check that out, but hopefully it's okay and I can just put the pads in and we're good to go. So now I got to take this off, and basically taking this cap off, taking this off and getting it done. So here's what's left of the brake pad for the front right. That's it. It's down to nothing there, and maybe 1/8 of an inch there. Other than that, it's not too bad. Now we got to get this thing off. Working this off. There we go. All right, getting the cotter pin out, same as before. Take this off. Now unscrew this thing. And pull this off then. There we go. Clean this off with some brake cleaner. Just putting a light coating on this. All right, got the new one here, and place that on the spindle. Here's the new one so far. And once again with this one, you tighten it up to 17 to 25 foot-pounds, back it off a half turn, and then torque it up to 20 foot-pounds. Let's get these in here so the bearings are seated. All right, there we go. This is at 27. There we go. Can put this back on. Cotter pin back in. So we've got this on here. This is all tightened up, cotter pins in, bearings are in, and now it's just about putting the caliper back on. On this one, I'm going to take out these old dirty clips and then put in some new ones, which will look like that when they're in. It's just a matter of taking this off, and they just clip into these areas here like that. And we'll put in this one too. There it is with the new clips, ready for the new brake pads. And as like the other ones, these pistons here are so extended, they've got to be pushed back, and the best way to do it is to use a clamp, a C-clamp. Pop the cap back on. Both these are done to 85. All right, we're getting around to putting the pads in now. Should be pretty straightforward. Slide this one in. Got to put these little screws back in and mount the caliper. All right, this caliper with the new pads, the new hub and rotor is good to go, and this is on nicely and needs to be a little bit loose so that it can adjust to the brake wear as it goes through. So that's pretty good. Time to put it back together. I'm going to spray this down with brake cleaner. this tightened up, torqued up to 100. Cap back on for now. There we go. And finally, you want to put the master cylinder cap back on like that, and we're good to go. Hey everyone, that concludes this video on changing everything on the front end of that Ford Ranger. So including the bearings, the spindles, the rotors, the brake pads, and getting that all up and running again. So realistically, this job is a few hours to do. So you've got to order all the parts in advance, and then once you get into it, everything going as planned, you're looking at 2 or 3 hours to do it. If a snag happens, like one of your calipers is broken or something like that, then you've got to reorder it or repair that. So it could be problematic depending on how well yours goes. So fortunately, in my case, everything went according to plan. There was no hiccups, so it was a pretty straightforward procedure of exactly what I showed you in the video. So totally doable, stuff you can do at home with the right tools and equipment, including a jack and some basic tools to get your tire off your car and reinstall it. So nothing too fancy at all. I want to thank you guys for sticking around and watching the videos. Special thank you for those people who subscribe. I really appreciate it. The channel is growing in very small increments, so that's positive, I guess. And we'll see where it goes. So anyway, thanks again for watching. Feel free to subscribe. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you back here next time.